by my attitude that I most definitely from.
All right, welcome everybody to this week's episode of The Fantasy Therapist. Our guests this week will include Chris Vaccaro, Nelson Sousa, Matt Modica, and myself. We'll take turns on the couch comparing those bad beats. That's right, nobody cares about our teams. You all care about your own teams. You're probably here looking for an edge in the playoffs, and you've come to the right place. So let's get into the Empire. But first, we do have to get that quick turn on the couch. I'm sorry, guys. When you play as many leagues as we do, you want a place where you want to whine a little bit, celebrate a little bit. So we'll go clockwise from me. We'll start with Matt. And Matt, what did you have? Give us a good story and a bad story from this past week.
The only good thing was, and I hate to even give the guy credit because he killed me in my others, was T. Higgins. Me and my partner, Jason Anthony, in the FFPC main event, were able to get the third seed. We went into the championship game, which we needed to win, obviously to get some money, but also to get into the big dance. And we were down 2.3 points, and we had T. Higgins going. They had nobody. And thank God he caught that second pass. Otherwise, we would have lost by 0.05.
Yeah.
There's
Thanks a lot, T. Higgins, for your two-catch performance. Appreciate it.
Otherwise, a big F you to T. Higgins. But
seriously,
the negative, there's a few, but the one that really got me was my silver bullet. I just needed to win, and I locked up best record. If I lost, I'd be in a three-way tie, and just needed to outscore the other opponents. It came down to me having C.D. Lamb versus Chase Brown, and I wound up losing by like 4 points to Wayne Ellis, so I didn't get in the bullet.
All right, Chris, what do you got?
Listen, guys, first off, let me say this. Thank God the show got canceled, 24 hours ago, because the looks on our faces yesterday morning coming off of that Monday night debacle, we just look like four depressed people. 24 hours later, it didn't do too much more, but at least it helped a little bit to get over. My biggest bad beat, it was my worst bad beat in the history of myself playing fantasy football by far. It was the 10K NFFC Diamond, my biggest league. I started the year off terribly the first 3 weeks. I was playing catch up the whole season. The last 4 weeks, I put up 175 plus, got myself into the fourth playoff spot heading into the last week. Long story short, I was trailing by 30 points. One guy, I passed him on Monday night with a combination of Chase Brown and Aubrey. And then the one guy, I was 1.2 points behind a playoff spot. I was 1.2 points out of a playoff spot with that blocked kick. If Dallas just recovers it, I get my Aubrey field goal. I move into the Diamond playoffs. That didn't happen. I still had Chase Brown. Chase Brown got me 10 yards. I just needed 3 more yards. Just hand the ball off to Chase Brown. Instead, they throw it to Jamar Chase, who scores a 40-yard touchdown. And I miss out on the Diamond playoffs by 1 point. Absolutely gutted, absolutely sick. If any play just would have happened a different way between Aubrey and Chase Brown the final 2 minutes of that game, I'm in the Diamond playoffs, but I miss it by a point, and I'm sick about it, and I won't get over that for a long time. So, Nelson. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to have a good story, guys?
Yeah, come on. Reach deep. Reach deep.
Yeah, that Burrow-Chase combination won me an online championship, but big effing deal. Nelson.
Mine is worse than Chris's, really.
You can't top that, Nelson. You cannot top that bad beat story right there. I'm sorry.
Listen, I can't for that bad beat in particular, but at least you've got some horses in the race.
Mm.
For me, the volume that I do, I expect better from myself in terms of teams, that make the playoffs. So just to give you, I don't know if I've ever shared this. I've shared it on the FTN Discord. I look as a goal for my main events is to have 33% of my main events to make the playoffs. And that's always a number that I've used. And I've always met that 33%. Especially like I would say the last 5 years or so in counting. This year, it was bad. It was ugly. So in terms of like horror stories and things like that, it's not so much a bad beat per se, because the bad beat is on myself.
Yeah.
Just across the board, just a bad fantasy season when it comes to having playoff teams. All my high dollar leagues can't even sugarcoat it. Like, they just missed. So I have one diamond that Chris is not in. Missed the playoffs by, a few points, not much. So I can go back and beat myself up on lineup calls that the one, start this guy instead of that guy, and that makes all the difference.
That's the worst. That's the worst part of what we do too. When you miss the playoffs by a couple points, and that happened to me in way too many leagues in week 14, you look back on all the bad decisions that we've made the last couple weeks going into those weeks, and it eats at you. And I know I did it an ungodly amount of times. Nelson, I know you said the same thing over these past weeks. It makes it hurt even worse.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking back at the teams, of course, when we do volume, we're going to have a couple of dud teams that finish, close to last place. And those teams are toast. But for the majority of my teams, it was a lot of 4th and 5th place finishes is what it came down to. And I look at each league and I'm like, good, not good enough, buddy. So it was a lot of mediocre teams is what I had. I didn't necessarily have bad teams, but I didn't have it just wasn't good enough at the end of the day. So that's my horror story.
Nelson, I hear that. Yeah, I hear that. I'm sorry. If you look down my whole team page on my NFFC, you see all 4s and 5s, and it makes me sick to my stomach. So I missed 3 prime times by less than 25 points. And it's just that hurts. Dan, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No,
Nelson, you got one for the good side?
Yeah, absolutely. My consolation teams are littered with Chase Brown, so I'm taking that kid down this
year. All right. So I'll start off with my good one. I had a team. It was locked into second place for a prime time, and the team above me was going to get record and points, but that last Jamar Chase touchdown put me up by 0.45 to take the lead on points. So now I've at least got a chance to be playing for the first place prize in that prime time. But on the other hand, I had another team where we had a huge lead on everybody else, and a team came from over 100 points back to beat us with Josh Allen and Jordan Addison.
Josh Allen.
It was unreal. We had a 104-point lead. We lost by 0.8. If only that last pass to Ferguson by Rush had been completed, we would have won. We would have, won the points. Instead, we're a third place team in an OC, and we're still going to be in the shootout, but we got no money coming from that one. So that was tough for sure. But I got to tell you, I've had several therapy sessions with my new doctor, Dr. Tito's.
Yeah, I got that same one.
And oh man, it's helped a lot.
I actually went out last night, and Matt can attest to this. I went out, sat in the car, had a couple glasses of wine, tried to unwind and get my head out of this thing after 14 weeks. People don't understand. I know we have a lot of listeners that are like, all right, guys, we get it. Listen, you play high stakes, you play volume, you do what we do. It's a 14-week grind of what we do day in, day out. I was lost last night, to be honest with you, not going through all my teams and starting to get waivers together and looking at, all right, what am I going to do with lineup wise? And each team takes time, when the 14 weeks comes to an end, it's a really weird thing that, you go through, but it's a grind and you got to get away from it for, some time. So I know we got the 3-week sprint coming up and we hope our luck changes for the teams that we got in. But it's a grind, man. It's a grind. It takes a lot out of us.
No doubt.
It definitely does.
No doubt. Yeah. Because, you just don't know until that last week, what is going to come of all this. Some teams, are in, some teams, are out, but there's usually so many teams where just anything could happen. And if it goes bad, it's just, you feel like you spent all that time and just, threw it out the window.
That's the thing. With the easy ones are the ones where we cruise and we got a dominant team and it's in first or second all year long. We know we're taking it to the playoffs. Those are the ones that are, that make you sleep well at night. Those are great. But the ones that you grind and you're trying to get it into the playoffs and you just missed out or you just make it either way like that, it's, it makes you feel like, all right, the last 14 weeks was worth it compared to the last 14 weeks. I grinded on this team so hard. And you just missed out, like I just explained to you guys with my Diamond League. That's such a money flip that I get that team in, and I could potentially win, $80,000 compared to I just missed it by 1 point, and I get 0. Like it just grind. It just eats at you. But I digress.
All right, guys. Before we move on to the rest of the show, we're just gonna pay some quick bills here. We'll be right back.
Hey, I know DFS may have peaked, but there are still hundreds of thousands of people to play and millions of dollars up for grabs every week. So let's put our hoodie on and let's talk about Player Profiler's DFS Dominator. It has a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Billy and Theo and Bradley and Evan and that Player Profiler AI engine to create cash game lineups that certainly have a high floor, but also give you that ceiling. Now, you've probably heard about the most powerful tool of all, our Lineup Genius. We know winning GPPs requires a completely different approach, which is why our Lineup Genius takes you through the process of selecting the quarterbacks in the juiciest matchups. Then it highlights the stacks and runbacks that are available, lets you pick the chalk level, lets you pick the level of correlation with a number of other proprietary settings available to you. Click a button and it generates hundreds of lineups to be imported into FanDuel and DraftKings. And it's just $45 a year, not a week, a year. So for that reason alone, if you play DFS, you'd be an idiot not to buy the DFS Dominator.
All right, we're back. Matt, why don't you get us started? What do you got for us this week?
Just the first observation I want to make. We've told some horror stories, but I want to try and be positive. Getting that extra 24 hours in, getting out of the fetal position. The teams that we do have in. And I'm grateful for that. I'm going to spill some beer for the departed, those soldiers, that Fort Mighty, and, just didn't show up Monday night, I guess.
We lost a lot of soldiers this week, Matt.
But, you got to be grateful for that. And I honestly, I don't know who's going to be, that combination. Obviously, if we knew that, we'd be betting a lot of money or, playing certain things to get there. But I think to me, that's the most interesting part of what lies ahead. And I can't beat myself up anymore on what I could have did, what I should have did. That's over and done with. It's got to be positive vibes from this moment forward. And, the horror stories are horrors, but there was good. And I'm going to bank on that. The observations for me this week is really watching the injury situations. I mean, guys that we banked on. Breece Hall, is he going to play again? I don't think he's playing this week. We don't know. We're hoping. I mean, I don't know. If you have Braylon Allen, or if you picked up the other guy, you're hoping he doesn't play. Because
that was a huge disappointment, right? That was a huge disappointment and a storyline this past week. I think everybody was getting excited to get their Braylon Allen shares finally in with the whole backfield to himself. And a lot of people got let down. It was basically a 50-50 split with Isaiah Davis, right, Matt? So going forward, I think that's got to change your outlook. If you're taking a Braylon Allen team into the playoffs, you don't have that bell cow that we all thought these last 13 weeks going, if Hall ever missed time, we got an RB1 on our hand. Well, now it's, it changed real quick.
It's still, I totally agree. And I was a little hesitant that he was going to have that, bell cow game after, this Isaiah Davis guy, whatever the hell, showed up a little the week prior. But they got Jacksonville. So if I have to put him in as my RB2 this week, because Guerrero might not play, which is kind of, really disappointing after that. Like, we lost 6 points when he got hurt late in that game because he probably scores another touchdown. But that's the thing. Braylon Allen, Guerrero, is Patrick Taylor the guy that's going to, help you this week? It's, Dan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I just wanted a quick shout out to Nelson. I was asking him this very question about Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis because my partner and I were going back and forth, and I was like, man, we gotta put in Isaiah Davis instead of Ray Davis. That's how bad it was at running back for our particular team. And he's like, no, man, it's got to be Ray Davis. Got to be Ray Davis. So I'm like, I knew that my partner definitely listens to what Nelson has to say. So I just texted Nelson. I didn't tell him, who wanted which. And I said, is it Isaiah Davis or is it Ray Davis? He was like, absolutely Isaiah Davis. And what a great call. So Nelson,
shout out to you, Nelson.
Shout out to you.
Thank you.
So,
we're trying to cheer you up today, Nelson.
I found it.
No.
Now the bad news is that was that same team that that got caught by a team that was 100 points behind, but
never mind.
Felt good to make the right call. So
one of the most amazing things in Week 14, and it did help me because we won that main event, was the Jonnu Smith game. The guy had a goose egg. He disappeared. He's been wonderful.
Amazing.
He's been amazing. He gets 0 points. And you're like, oh, man. And then he puts up 14 points in overtime on that drive. That was like, so maybe Jonnu saved Christmas. Who knows?
He saved Christmas for a couple of my teams, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, so, but the thing for me, like, going forward now, it's guys like Tashawn Samuels, formerly known as Debo. Everybody's written this guy off. I was so wrong on Debo. I thought a monster year was coming even before the injuries that occurred and stuff like that. Couldn't have been more wrong. But, I mean, who's to say this guy doesn't put up a big game Thursday night or something? And it's like,
Matt, it's not
how do you trust to even start the guy? But you may have to. I'm just making the point here on guys that have disappointed us, like T. Higgins this week. We all hate T. Higgins.
But T. Higgins, he's shown the ability.
They can't compare the two. Yeah,
he's shown the ability to put up 20+ this year. Debo, except for
week one, it was 2 games.
First two.
That game, the game versus Seattle on Thursday night, he put up 20 when he had the big play.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still.
And then he had that calf strain. Hasn't been the same.
And I get the point that you're trying to make, Matt.
It's not
because
just
it happens every year, right?
Yes.
So 2 years ago, I remember vividly because it was between me and Jason Sumner, who ended up winning the primetime main event. And he ended up – I thought I was going to win hands down, and – he ended up getting a 40-point game out of Mike Evans. And 2 years ago, Mike Evans had done nothing throughout the regular season. Okay. He had a couple of games. Okay. And the rest was all garbage. And then he puts up this 40-point game in the shootout, and he's a total difference maker. And it's like, okay, you get there to the shootout with this guy. He's owned very little on teams. And it's kind of like a DFS from a DFS perspective, right? The low owned guy, right? That it puts up the big game. It helps propel your team while other teams don't have him, right? So I get what you're saying, Matt. Like Debo, it's like, okay, Debo could be that guy.
Oh, but, yeah, I'm not even saying it's him. I'm just trying to say the guys that have disappointed us. All these guys that have been heroes for the first 14 weeks, some of them aren't going to do it. I mean, obviously you want to go in with Burrow and Chase. Those are the two guys you want to be firing, in this sprint before it happens, based on the past 14 weeks. What do you have, Dan? You have something else?
Yeah, well, my point is just, this is a time of year where you almost need to sort of erase the names from your roster and just look at, the underlying, what's going on with them. What percentage of the offense are they, how much targets are they getting? How powerful is this offense? All that kind of stuff, because those are the things that matter to me. Like Deebo Samuel, I don't know if I can start him. I'll tell you what, if I got like Adam Thielen, I'm probably starting him over Deebo Samuel, because Adam Thielen's working, Deebo's not. And I don't care about the name value anymore. I don't care how ridiculous it looks to have 800-year-old Adam Thielen in my lineup. I'm just putting him in there. I don't care. I want to win.
So to Matt, your point and what Nelson's follow up there, you get into the 3-week sprint here, and I think your mind frame, you have to switch a little bit. You're talking about a guy like Debo. If you got a Debo somehow into a playoff team, I get the idea of wanting to put him in because you're not going to see most Debo teams in the playoff. And if he gets hot, just like Nelson said with Mike Evans, now you have separated yourself from the field, right? I look at it, I'd look at it that way, but at the same time, I'll throw out this guy as an example. I was going to bring it up later, but a Jalen Waddle, he's starting to actually produce now. We drafted him as a second rounder. He did shit for 12 weeks. Now he's getting hot in the last couple of weeks. He's putting up numbers on the board here. You get a Waddle in there. That's somebody that's in your lineup. That's what you get excited about for these next 3 weeks is maybe I'm like a 2%, of the field that has a Jalen Waddle on their roster. And now he gets hot for these 3 weeks and becomes the second rounder that I drafted him as. And that's how you separate. Listen, everyone's got Burrow. Everyone's got Chase, as someone that doesn't have Burrow and Chase, like myself, going into the playoff field, those are the guys I'm focused in on these next 3 weeks and hoping that I wake up on a Sunday morning and it's 45 mile an hour wind and they tank, they bust because now the whole field gets wiped out. And I move past them with a guy like a Waddle, or my quarterback. So that's the way, you approach the championship round sprints there. But a guy like Debo, it's tough to go in because I haven't seen it yet.
To piggyback off you, Chris, and we'll kind of go off of some of like these low-owned players. I can only imagine that Puka is probably low-owned.
That's my guy, yeah.
As a late first, early second-round pick that basically did nothing all year. And if you were able to piece together that team and withstand, that losing him, for the first, 5-6 weeks of the year, he's got potential now to be a difference maker.
He was an observation of mine that he's my number one guy I would be scared to see on someone else's roster that I don't have in this championship rounds. That was going to be one of my observations. Might as well bring it out now. I have others that I want to get to, but right there, Puka is right there at the top of the list. If you have Puka and you're in the championship rounds, I'm petrified of you.
Yep. Yeah, no, and Debo is just used as somebody that's been awful this year, and I wanted to point out my swing and miss on that. But just the point that there's going to be guys that have disappointed. Take the name off, and that all you got. If you got in, and you're going to sit there, and it's just how difficult. My main point here is how difficult fantasy football is in setting up rosters. And people overlook that because I always hear, "Oh, fantasy football, it's luck. It's a lot easier." That's a ton of bullshit. It's like you said, for 14 weeks, we killed ourselves. We lived and died with these teams. We look back at the bad decisions all the time, not the good ones. We always look back at the ones where we screwed up. So for me, and it's these running backs that we see happen in these sprints all the time, like Bucky Irving now. I knew it was risky playing him on Sunday, but he was going to play. He was healthy. And how do you not sit him? And first off, who the hell was your other option? Even if he was your RB2, what was your other option? You didn't have Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. I mean, Zach Charbonnet comes out and puts up 40
Oh my
points.
God.
That was insane. Kenneth Walker, where were you? I needed you.
I don't think we see Matt. I don't think we'll see Kenneth Walker maybe for these playoff runs with this calf injury here.
I agree.
Especially coming off the Charbonnet game. They're not going to rush Walker back. They're going to say, "Hey, listen, we got a 2-game. What do they got? A 2-game lead now in the division. They can be all right here.
They do have a 2-game lead,
Charbonnet.
but they're home for both. But it's Seattle and Minnesota. So those.
Yeah,
are the games
listen. They got a
that
tough
rough.
road ahead, but they're not going to rush
I
Walker
agree.
back. Is
I
the
agree
point?
with you on.
Yeah.
I don't see Kenneth Walker, playing this week. That they're still doing more tests. And
Yeah.
this guy
Shout
just
out.
went off.
Yeah, 100%. Shout out in the chat to our guy Frankie Mamola. He also agrees with us with Puka's the top guy you want to not see on other playoff rosters. Shout out to him. He made the New York Super playoffs, and I always laugh because he's got a line that he says all the time that when you're going bad, he always says, "I wouldn't want to get on a plane with him." Well, guess what? In week 14. After week 14, you wouldn't want to get on a plane with me and Nelson. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, what Puka did on Sunday. I mean, watching that game, watching the Bills head coach blow another decision late, but what Puka did was just phenomenal. I mean, the catches he made, and it's going to be a real exciting career for him if he can stay healthy with that.
Yeah, he's legit.
And I mean, I don't know. My last observation is, as the teams you have in, as good as a player as you are, or as bad as a player as you are, you need some luck on your side these next 3 weeks. You need that little angel to fall on your shoulder.
No doubt.
You walk outside, you step in some shit, and they always say that's good luck. I don't understand why, but I've always told that my whole life. So so I mean, that's what I got. Like I said, I'm in a much better mood 24 hours later than I was yesterday. So maybe it was a good thing we got postponed.
It's a lot easier to focus on our teams that are still in once we've kind of had a little time to separate from those teams that disappointed us. So no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. All right, Chris, what do you got?
Yeah, and listen, to follow up what Matt said, it's definitely the most exciting for what we do, playing high stakes. This is definitely the most exciting time of the year right here. The couple days leading into the playoff sprint. I know right before the games kick off every year for that, Thursday nighter for the 3 weeks, it's, you get those butterflies in your stomach. It's just like being on draft day in Vegas or New York. It's like, here we go. This could be the start of something maybe special. We've all had great runs in particular years at making runs at titles or individual private dollar leagues. And it's just an exciting 3 weeks for all of us, whether even in your home leagues, and you're competing for a title. So great time of year right here. And hopefully the ball bounces our way and we all have a successful playoff run here. I have some observations.
Dr. T.
Yeah, there you go. That's the alternative, Dan, right? The alternative is, everything goes to shit, and then we break the bottle out, and Christmas is ruined. It's one of two options. All right, let me get into some observations of mine. Again, we'll talk about what we saw on the field and everything like that, but I want to take a step back. Just talk about, as the kids say nowadays, give certain people their flowers in this industry. That's what I want to do. I want to just take a couple minutes here and recognize some great performances at the high stakes level of people. Let's start off with Chad Schroeder. There can't, there's no words to describe the year that Chad Schroeder had. 18 primetime teams he put into the field this year. He's got 13 of the top 52 overall, which I don't care how much volume you play for the people that are listening that say, he plays 100 million team, whatever. I don't care. You put 13 of the top 52 overall standings and get 18 of your teams in the primetime field. He won my diamond, myself and Nelson's Diamond League regular season, countless Super League titles regular season. Chad, outstanding season. He needs to be recognized as usual. Our guy Duke Viveros, 25 online championship teams he qualified. The 2023 Bullet champion. Shout out to Duke. Stays consistent every year. My guys, Billy Waz, Mike Edelman, the two of them, they went into the auctions this year in New York. They qualified again, back-to-back years for both of them. Shout out to them. That's why they're Hall of Famers, great players, and they showed it again this year. I got two guys that I don't know particularly well. Maybe you guys do, but I got to shout these two out. I'm looking at stats. John Pierce and Mark Führer. Let me tell you what these two guys did. They entered the 20K Platinum and both 10K Diamonds, and they qualified in all three, the two of them. They made the playoffs in all three big leagues and countless supers. Every league I see that they were in, they qualified for the playoffs in the Platinum, the Diamond, and supers. They need to be recognized. That's an unbelievable feat. Not to miss the playoffs in any of your big dollar amounts leagues. So shout out to all those guys. I know I'm missing others, but just got to give you flowers and recognize these guys. So I don't know if any of you guys have any other guys you want to recognize that you saw had dominant regular seasons, but shout out to them.
I'll shout out my partner, Jason Anthony. He finished third in the primetime regular season. He was in the one league we did play against each other by accident. He just dominated. That was the first primetime of the year, the extended one, and he's got a hell of a team, so I'm going to wish him luck there.
Great observation there, Jason Anthony. Great season, and I've been looking at his team all year long, Matt, because we both have teams in the top 5 or 8 overall all year long. He's got a team that I don't know if you can be beat, honestly. It's
really. I mean, his bad weeks,
dominant.
He had a Thursday night. He started 2 guys. I think it was that Eagles Redskin game. He got like a total of 5 or 8 points. And he still put up like 170 something. He doesn't score less than 170 every week. I mean, he's a great guy, and I'm wishing him the best.
And I want to say, I think he's got the Burrow Chase
he does.
combination.
He got Achane.
Oh, Achane on that one?
Chase, Achane. I think he's got Monty on that team.
It's a wild team. Yeah, it's a wild team. Anything else from you guys on that? No? We'll move along. My second observation was really just talking about the combinations that I think in the playoff field right now you want. The players that I say, if you don't have them, you're scared to go and look. I think when you look at the top 20, 25 teams overall all year long, they're all Burrow, they're all Chase. You see a lot of Barkley, but besides those names, the guys I would be scared of that you don't want to see, I have 7 guys, 3 quarterbacks, Josh Allen, obviously, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. I think those 3 are the quarterbacks that if you don't have them, you're at a disadvantage these next 3 weeks in the sprint. The tight end position, Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, everybody has them in the championship field. I think you're at a disadvantage if you don't have those 2 guys at tight end. At wide receiver, it's Puka and it's Jamar Chase to me. I don't know if you guys feel differently, if you want to throw another name out there that you feel, but I think those are by far the top 2 wide receivers that you're.
I'll throw one wide receiver name in who I think You know, he caught a lot of slack last year, deservedly so, but JSN has really come on. And if you look at that breakout game where he put up the 37, since then he's basically scored 20 in every game except the Jet game where he scored 12. So he's another guy that, you know, has really taken off. Just wanted to give him some love for the hate that he's got.
No, listen, I have a couple teams that are in the playoff field with my guy JSN on it. I'm excited. I'm hoping that he's the difference maker, Matt, to be honest with you. I don't know. Yeah, I'm hoping he's the little bit of a difference maker. Lastly,
he's been awesome since week 9. I don't think he's been catching any flack.
No, but he had
early in the season. You probably mean that, right?
Everybody was like, "Oh, it was a waste. This guy's he's nothing more than a little slot receiver." You know.
Yeah.
Well, he caught flack the first 7-8 weeks because even here on this show we were like, "Oh, great, another 10 to 12 point JSN week." You know, ho hum, and let's move along because that's what he was doing. You know, I owned all the JSN and I knew every week. That's why I was struggling so much. And now the last 5 weeks, JSN's dropping these 20-plus games. He looked like he's now asserted himself to the number 1 in Seattle on a weekly basis. I know everybody everywhere has, you know, him ranked as the one now over DK in Seattle. But if he could stay hot here these next 3 weeks, I think he could find himself on the championship, winning rosters.
I think he's actually on all my prime times and main events that made it in. So
he's big for you. How good he's big for you these next 3 weeks. Yeah. Seattle's definitely going to be one of those offenses that I hope gets real hot these next 3 weeks. Lastly, the running back position, Saquon Barkley, you know, everybody's got him. He was the number 1 fantasy player this year. I'm going to throw in the last name here that I think is going to be a huge difference maker these next championship rounds, these next 3 weeks, and it's Chuba Hubbard. I just have a feeling that with his schedule and the way he, you know, Jonathan Brooks, everybody was worried about him coming on here. Now unfortunately, that was a devastating injury for him. The kid, I feel bad about that. But he's got the whole backfield to himself. The offense is the arrows pointing up here, running and receiving the ball out of the backfield. I think if you have Chuba on your roster and you're going to the playoffs, you could have a potential top 5 running back on a weekly basis and a real difference maker. So, again, another name I wouldn't be surprised to see on the championship winning roster. So those names right there at each of the positions, I think those are the guys you're focused in on each week, the next 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'll tell you one guy that, you know, I got to start, but it's just such a terrible situation, is Neighbors. I mean, the guy's so talented, but the quarterback play is just so awful. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't know what to do Sunday. They said he was playing, so I was like, screw it, I got to play him. But it's something where, you know, you just not cut. You know the talent's there, but the situation is just so awful.
Yeah. Yep.
No doubt.
Any of you guys, Nelson, Dan, you guys have any other names that you think could be the biggest difference makers over the next 3 week sprint here?
I'll actually jump the line. My observations, I've got my top 5 at each position, not named certain players. So we're going to, like, my top 5 playoff quarterbacks, not named Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Joe Burrow, the very 3 that you threw out there that you better be worried if you don't have them. Here's who I'd be throwing in there if I've got them instead. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Jaden Daniels, Stafford, and then Hurts. I think, though, if you've got one of those 5, you've at least got a puncher's chance going up against the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, and the Joe Burrows.
Dan, real quick, I agree wholeheartedly on 2 of those names, and I was almost going to have them on Sam Darnold and Matt Stafford. I think they can have a big playoff push here. Their offenses are clicking. They got the weapons. Those 2 guys, I think, could hang with the big boys.
Yeah, 100%. And Jaden Daniels has looked so much better the last couple weeks. It looks like he's over his injury, which is great to see. So he's somebody I'm really excited about starting in places where I have him too. And then I'll just move into my top 5 playoff running backs not named Saquon. One I'm pretty sure that Nelson is going to want to talk about is Chase Brown. Josh Jacobs, I mean, you just cannot, ignore the touchdowns. Bijan Robinson doing it all despite the fact that Kirk Cousins sucks. Joe Mixon and Devin A. Chan. And I totally agree with Chuba Hubbard, and I think it's a crime that Bucky's back is flaring up. And we could even throw Charbonnet in there if Walker doesn't play, it's going to be Charbonnet, and that could be good. So thoughts on those?
Charbonnet, real quick. Charbonnet's going to be huge for these 3 weeks if Walker stays out, because what you're looking at now is you take your playoff team into the field, and you got a major RB1 that you're taking off your bench that's making a playoff team lineup even stronger now for the next 3 weeks. So that's not a guy that was in your starting lineup, and carried you into the playoffs. That's somebody you were looking at on the bench, and those guys are rare late in the season. That everybody, to our point earlier about Braylon Allen, that was what you had Braylon Allen sitting on your bench for. You were hoping at some point late in the year this would unfold, and Braylon Allen would be a 25-point-a-week running back in the fantasy lineup. Jordan Mason, if once McCaffrey went down, the same thing, and then he went down. Garendo now, he's going to, probably miss Thursday. That was the difference maker you were hoping. Charbonnet's the guy. Charbonnet's that guy that you could put in your lineup in your flex spot if you had 2 really strong running backs. If you had a Barkley and Chase Brown as your running back combo going into these fantasy playoff weeks, and Charbonnet was sitting on your bench collecting rust. Now he's your flex player. Now your team just went just to the stratosphere. So he's going to be huge if Walker doesn't make it back.
Yeah, and if you could survive, if you could put up a good week this week, and say Bucky didn't play, he's got Dallas and Carolina, those last 2. So, I mean, he was coming on strong, and we'll see what happens. I mean, even Isaac Garendo, it's like such a, the euphoric high of watching him play on Sunday and then being like, I got this guy for the sprint, and now the odds are against him playing on Thursday. So, got to deal with that.
Yep, definitely. All right, wide receivers. We know Jamar Chase, but I'll give you 5. A couple of them we talked about already. Puka, definitely. JSN, definitely. Mike Evans, I think, is coming on strong. Justin Jefferson took basically most of October and November off, and so that might actually make him a little bit less owned in the full field. And then Nico Collins as well. He missed a significant chunk of time. So if you were able to somehow drag a Nico share in, I think that's a nice pivot point as well. And, for those who had Jeudy sitting on their bench, that's not a bad one either.
Yeah, Jordan Addison, that guy is really, except for that 1 week prior,
I had a
nice month.
I had a primetime team that I have Addison and Jeudy as my 5 and 6, and I have not had them in my lineup the last 4 weeks. So I missed all the Addison and Jeudy games because my top 4 wide receivers were just too good that I couldn't get them in. So I've ate all those games, and it was only until last week that Pickens missed the game where I got Jeudy in, and he only gave 17. So I missed all those big points and missed the playoffs by 8 points in that particular league. So yay me. Anyway, Dan, you got tight ends?
Tight ends, of course. I do. If you don't have Bowers and McBride, I think you want to have Njoku. He's been coming on gangbusters ever since.
Big time.
Yeah, Jameis started at quarterback. He's just had the one bad week. George Kittle, also gangbusters with Debo sucking. It's basically been the Kittle and Jennings show. So that's working out well for you at tight end. Jonnu Smith obviously has been a revelation. Nobody expected much out of him coming in this season from Miami, but wow, he has become an integral part of that offense. And Mark Andrews is, he was terrible early in the year. The first month was just awful, but he's been coming on. So those Mandrews teams, I think, also have a decent chance too. So there's some decent tight ends out there that might not be heavily represented into the playoffs, like the McBrides and the Bowers and the Kelseys and all that.
Yeah, and Joku's the name that stands out the most. I'd be worried about seeing him on teams right now. He's really getting hot and getting targeted a ton every week from Winston.
I got a question for you guys, being that, I can pick your brains here. We're live. I have, in FFPC, where you get the two flexes, one of my flexes will be McBride or Bowers, since I have those two tight ends. But the wide receiver, this is my question. Who is the flex wide receiver here? Obviously, I'm starting Chase and Nico. Do you start Jeudy versus the Chiefs or Addison versus the Bears? That's my decision, pretty much.
I'll go on this one real quick. Addison versus the Bears. He tore them up the last time. It seems like, they're going to put Jalen Johnson and focus in on trying to take Jefferson away. Addison had the huge game. And then to boot, I'm hearing 25 plus mile an hour wind for the Cleveland-Kansas City game on Sunday. Kind of a bad weather game. So to me, that's a no-brainer. Indoors, give me Addison. Stay hot.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. If this helps you, Matt, Chris and I have been awful with our start-sit decisions. And I agree with Chris that you start Addison.
Oh, you start Jeudy then, Matt. If me and Nelson are agreeing.
That's what I'm trying to say is just for the fact that Chris and I haven't been able to get these start-sit calls correct. We're both in agreement on Addison. So I think I would lean Jeudy.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a weather factor, I mean, I think that really, but that was basically my problem. I figured if I got you guys here, I might as well ask the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that without weather, I'm probably going Jeudy just because he's the more integral cog to that offense. Addison is not the primary receiver. Jeudy is one of the two big primary receivers in Cleveland, and we know that they're going to be chucking the ball all the time. Whereas Minnesota, you don't necessarily know that they're going to chuck it that much. I mean, they use Darnold pretty much just as much as they have to, and not a whole lot more. They'd be happy to give Aaron Jones plenty of rushes, and all that kind of stuff, because they just don't want to expose Sam Darnold too much, because as good as he can play, he can make some bonehead plays. He can take some sacks, some things like that. That can hurt you. So I think if the weather's good, I'd take Jeudy. If the weather's not good, then you probably got to pivot over to Addison. 49
fantasy NFFC fantasy points for Sam Darnold this week.
Yep.
At the perfect time. And I know I used him in one primetime league on my Lamar Jackson team. He's my backup. I know a lot of other people did that as well, with Jaden Daniels out and other 6 teams on a bye. A lot of people I saw had to put Sam Darnold in, off their bench. And what a perfect time to drop that huge number. But that Vikings offense really scares me. They would be my number one offense these next 3 weeks that I would want to hitch my wagon to, or at least right there. Jefferson, like you said, has been slow for a month now. Watch this guy explode Jamar Chase type numbers and production for these next 4 weeks. Jefferson's going to eat. He's not done having a game like he just had this past week. You're going to get another Justin Jefferson monster game at some point over these next 3 weeks. In my opinion. So I wish I had him.
I mean, they got a nice schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, after this, it's, what do they have?
Who's championship week for the
Seattle?
Vikings? I know Seattle in Seattle. That's not that
they
good.
got Seattle, and then they got Green Bay at Minnesota, which is going to be a fantastic game.
Yeah, in the Dome, right? Yeah,
yes,
it's in Minnesota, and who knows about Jair Alexander?
Mm-hmm.
He's always in, out, whatever. If you don't see Jair Alexander that week, if they shut him down, man, oh man, the Vikings could go off versus that Packer D. We just saw it with the Lions, what they did to them on Thursday Night Football. So I'd be a little worried about going into Seattle. Maybe you get a bad weather game. The corners are playing a little better for Seattle now. It's not an all systems go versus that Seattle secondary and defense like it was earlier in the season. So, but this week and championship week, that Vikings offense, we can see fire.
One thing on the Seattle defense, I think they've greatly benefited the past 2 out of 3 weeks playing the Cardinals. For some reason, they really seem to have their number, even before the new coach came in this year. A couple of weeks ago, I think Kyler was 0-5 or 0-6 for Seattle. So it's just, I guess, one of those where it just doesn't match up well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right, we'll keep moving on here. A couple other observations. I know during the year how we talked about on a weekly basis how 200 points at the high stakes level was like that, that threshold that you're looking to hit, and how on a weekly basis, when I would look at all 1,150 teams in the NFFC primetime, maybe you had 2 or 3 that broke 200 on most weeks, because it was such a low scoring season. And, on a weekly basis, if you got over 180, you sounded like a champion. This past week, in week 14, 46 teams had 200 points or more in the field. So I just thought that was an astonishing number, just to talk about how high of a scoring week at the right time for all those teams that were in 7th place in their league standings. And they had the right combination. Maybe they had the Josh Allen and Jamar Chase combo, or Zach Charbonnet, these guys, and shot up. I saw a lot of teams that went from mid-pack and snuck in like a 3rd place or something like that. So if you were hoping for the miracle going into week 14, good amount of people caught that miracle. That 3rd place, I can't catch the guy in first. Well, boom, I dropped a 220 and I won my league. So monster week. We hope to see a week 14 again at some point in these next 3 weeks, because that's what we're all shooting for. We all want to hit that big number at some point over these next 3 weeks. So shout out to, it was crazy, the late games. Usually the 4:00 games, I feel like on a weekly basis this year died. If you had a good 1 p.m. slate where there was actually points and you're like, all right, we got something building here, then the 4 p.m.s started, and it was like, the day died. It was disgusting. This week, the 1 p.m.s were pretty good, and then the 4 p.m.s blew up, even though there was a small amount of games. Josh Allen broke fantasy, 61 points. You had Puka and the boys went to work, and countless others, and then obviously Monday night, the Burrow Chase again. The Burrow and Chase, I think it's 3 times this year where Chase went 175 and multiple touchdowns. So if you had Burrow Chase, you were sleeping like a baby all year long. It was a dream season. And, I won't bring up the fact that most of us on draft day, late August, early September, were running scared from that combination because of the holdouts, the injuries, the Burrow talk about his wrist isn't right. And then we all got burned worse than any other on those two. So anything on that, guys?
Scheduling point for this weekend. We always want these late games. They're finally giving us 5 late games. But you got Bills and Lions, which is the premier game that everybody wants to see. And then you got Steelers and Eagles at the same time. Like, I don't understand the NFL and what the hell they do.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, crazy. I looked at the schedule. Crazy. It's real good. No buys, no more. The buys are out of the way. Now we get a lot of football on Sunday, and especially at 4 o'clock. So it'll be a nice full day. And then we're back to the 2 Monday nighters again.
Yes.
I like that. I like that at this time of year. Give us a doubleheader on Monday night.
I just wish my Vikings weren't one of those teams, because I'll be watching that one pretty much exclusively. So,
I think most people will, Dan, instead of the Atlanta Vegas one, to see if Kirk Cousins can finally throw a touchdown pass. To see if he can break his 4-game streak of no touchdowns thrown, which is just simply amazing.
It really is amazing.
Point.
Like I had him as one of my 3 quarterbacks, and I had a couple of guys on buys, and I had to start him, and it was like, I don't know what the hell happened to that guy. He's got to have like an arm injury or something.
Chris, you cut me off before I could get to my kickers.
That's my next observation. Top 5 defenses and kickers for the playoffs, man. You beat me to it.
There you go.
No. So that's it. My last thing, I'll just say, and we've talked about it basically, this show, but I think the teams you want to be in on these next 3 weeks, the Bills offense, the Bengals offense, the Vikings offense, and the Rams offense. I think if I had to, have multiple pieces, it would be those 4 offenses all together. Maybe Baltimore and the Lions. I know everybody loves them, but I think those 4 are the main ones. And I think you could get off to a hot start.
Just because you mentioned the Lions,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have those 2 outdoor games. They played, 1 game outdoors so far, and then they got, at Chicago.
At Chicago. No.
That
The San Francisco game, maybe earlier in the season you were a little worried about it. I'd love to, to go in and have multiple Lions versus Niners
I
defense
agree.
now down the stretch.
Just that we do see a different golf, indoor and outdoor.
Sure.
So.
Yep. All right.
Nelson,
I'll turn it over to you guys.
What do you
Yeah,
got?
so with my observations, it's more of looking ahead and seeing what potential difference makers we have at different positions. And the guys that I see as potential difference makers at running back is Bijan Robinson, Charbonnet, if Walker's out, Chase Brown. And what's interesting about Chase Brown too is that he looks to me like a mini McCaffrey. The way they're using him out of the backfield and they're lining him up out wide, and Burrow's trusting him and actually throwing the ball to him down the sideline. He had that one throw down the sideline, and then the one in the end zone where the DB made a great play. So I think, and it's been difficult matchups. So when you actually look at his schedule, he's been putting up 20-plus point games, and it's not like they're over there, facing, Carolina and the Raiders every week. So he's a potential difference maker. Tony Pollard, I think, is a potential difference maker with his schedule and the workload that he's getting. I was going to say Garendo because Garendo looked really good on Sunday. And I was like, it proved my point that, I thought this kid, if he ever got a chance, that he could potentially be a difference maker. And unfortunately, he's got that foot sprain, they're calling it. You cannot believe anything Shanahan says. They're going to rest him the next couple of days, see if he's got a chance to play. I don't know. I think, unfortunately, that might have ruined his chances. I think he probably misses this Thursday and potentially next week. But I thought he had a chance.
Since you're talking Garendo, I'm sorry to cut you off. If he practices limited, say, tomorrow,
today,
and he's active.
The game is tomorrow.
Today, that's right. I keep thinking it's
today.
today.
Yeah, no problem.
And he's active tomorrow. You starting him?
I'm starting him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely starting him. I think it's a good matchup. And if they're playing him, that means that, they feel like he's good enough to go and that they just don't trust the other guys behind him. Taylor is gonna play, but Vaughn and the other kid, Izzy,
Banaconda.
Yeah, they probably, I don't think they're ready to really play all that much. So we'll see what happens.
I'm praying that he plays. I really am, because just like you said, what we saw, he's the guy. He can catch it. I mean, him and Bucky are 2 guys I really need to play this week and be healthy. But,
the guy that's disappointed at wide receiver for me, that I think it's going to be kind of like the grease the squeaky wheel this week is going to be AJ Brown.
100%.
Last year if you remember that after the first few weeks of the season, he put on a bitch fit, okay, wasn't happy. And the same thing happened this week where he was wide open and Hurts, couldn't find him. I think Kellen Moore and those guys are going to focus on trying to get him the ball. So I could see a big game out of him this week.
Even against Joey Porter?
I think so. Yeah, because I wonder if Joey Porter is really going to shadow him, because Devontae Smith is coming off a big game, and it's one of those situations where it's like, all right, just play your side, because you're gonna end up being on one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been saying this on the show for a while now, and to friends outside of the show, this Philly offense, even though they're on a 9-game, it sounds crazy, they're on a 9-game winning streak. Every week you look in the box score in fantasy, Jalen Hurts is dropping 30 plus. Everything looks good. There's something when you watch them every week, like I do, there's something not right in this passing. It's back-to-back weeks where he's 110 passing yards. I know Devonta missed some time, but it's just not clicking. Their games are boring. Thank God for Saquon. The pass game is just not hitting. If it starts to click this week, and maybe AJ Brown finally came out and said what someone like me and everyone else has been saying behind the scenes. Like, Hurts sucks. Hurts has been terrible passing wise. Like, it's just not there. And when he drops back to pass, it's little dink and dunk and yada yada. So something's got to change here. But hopefully with Devonta and AJ Brown for these next couple weeks, it turns around. I don't know if this is the matchup to do it, but let's see.
It's crazy, too, because they were such boys. Like, remember when they got traded? One of them was godfather to the other one's son. And,
no presents. No Christmas presents this year from Uncle
And now
AJ.
It's like they don't talk anymore. It's like, what?
Yeah. As my friend Scott Pianowski likes to say, the Eagles are a team that like to play with their food every week. I mean, they do just enough to win, but they don't ever really put anybody away. And this is an offense, I think, that's going to be really interesting. If they, when they lose their next game, I mean, it could get ugly fast in Philly.
They should have lost if Xavier Legette could have caught that pass.
I want to say
this week.
I want to say the next 3 weeks, just off the top. I don't have it if somebody wants to check, but I know because as a Barkley owner going in, I know I'm excited about week 2. I think it's Washington. Week 3 is Dallas.
Yep.
And then Dallas. So if you could get a decent game out of this, the big 3 or 4, the Hurts, Barkley, Brown, and Devonta, now with Goddard on IR, this is another bunch of names here that I'd be really excited about owning, even though it hasn't been great. You get past this week and you get a nice 27-24 game and everybody eats a little bit. And then you have these guys versus a Washington and a Dallas, the next, the final 2 weeks could be real good.
Yeah. All right. So AJ Brown was kind of like the guy that stuck out to me, kind of like this week, squeaky wheel, they concentrate getting him the ball. But I'm going to give you the rest of the stud wide receivers you're starting, okay? Mm-hmm. And then I look at it, for me, predicting like, Jamar Chase is going to be the difference maker in the shootout. Like, that's, we already know what the situation is there, that those guys are monsters. I'm going to give you guys under the radar wide receivers that I think are set up that could be difference makers, and they're not guys that you're necessarily starting on every team. Okay. The first guy is Christian Watson. I actually think that he's starting to come on, and he's looked a lot better lately, and he's got that big playability. So he's the first guy that I think is not going to be started on 100% of teams that could potentially be a difference maker. The second guy, Amari Cooper. I think he's at the point now that he's gotten comfortable in the offense, has done absolutely nothing all year. And I think he's one of those guys that all of a sudden in the shootout, he shows up. and I like their schedule. And the other guys, and I've been pointing this out now for a couple of weeks, so I'm just going to triple down again on these guys, and it's the combo of DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. I think those guys with the schedule that they have, I still think that they have the potential to be difference makers. And we saw a little bit of that last week where finally, Dunze caught a couple of touchdowns, and I think that momentum could carry forward. So what do you guys think of with the wide receivers?
And what a joke, by the way, the Bears offense again, 2 yards in that first half. Again, it's like they sleepwalk every week through the first half, and you think, oh my God, I'm getting shut out completely. And then they wake up in the second half and give some fantasy production. That was all to Dunze. I like those names, Nelson. I wouldn't be able to start Christian Watson. I'll tell you that right now. The Bears wide receivers, yeah, I'm gonna go to my deathbed this year on the Bears. I might as well. I suffered for 14 weeks. I might as well suffer for 3 more. That's the way I look at it. Dunze is definitely, he's on my list of a couple guys that I think, I'd feel comfortable starting now, going forward for sure. Who was the last name? That was, I'm blanking around real quick. Cooper, I wanted to also bring up, I think, he's over this little injury that he had that made him unproductive for weeks. And with Allen as the quarterback there, I could see him, if you have him on your fantasy team for these playoffs, I could see him putting up 3 big weeks here and, establish himself as a legit wide receiver 1 that he is, that they obtained him for in trade.
Do you think he can be consistent enough, though, with Shakir? And then, you're also looking at probably adding back in
Kincaid.
Well,
Kincaid and Coleman, yeah.
And Coleman both, it's like that's what scares me about those guys. Honestly, out of Nelson's list, I thought the most intriguing one was probably Watson. Now I'm not starting him over JSN or Mike Evans or anybody like that. But I mean, if you're sitting down in the standings, and you're looking up, 300-400 places or whatever, Watson is one of those guys I want to pivot to, off of maybe, I'm certainly starting him over like Debo Samuel or somebody like that. So sorry, Matt, we keep bagging on Debo for you here, but
I bagged on him. I called him out. That was one of the reasons I brought him up, because he started off the season with, I think, back-to-back 18-point games, and then pretty much died except for like one game. It was pretty. But as far as the Bills go, I like the Amari Cooper thing. I just think Shakir is so good, and it pretty much, the guy never drops a pass. I think he dropped one this week for like the first time. So that's going to be interesting, seeing how it shakes out for the Bills these next few weeks in the wide receiver. Dalton Kincaid, I honestly have no hope for.
I'm throwing the towel in on him.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's
not that I have any playoff teams. Not that I have any playoff teams with Kincaid rostered, because
you just worry that he could do just enough to mess up somebody else that could actually be good for you. That's the worry with Kincaid. But
I'll throw one matchup.
I think Shakir is probably gonna make Kincaid pretty much irrelevant no matter what. So.
Yeah, but Amari Cooper's been great for the Bills, even though he hasn't produced like in a football, real life sense. He's really helped that team out a ton. Just one thing I did want to throw in, that Week 17 game where it's Indianapolis at the Giants. I think Colt players could really do some crazy things in that one. So just look at the Colt schedule going down the stretch.
Oh yeah, they have a nice one. Dan, I think they're similar players. You said Watson would be your top guy instead of Cooper. They're both dealing with the same situations now with guys coming back in their offense. You got to assume that Romeo Doubs comes back into the Packers offense this week. And then what happens with Watson? He doesn't get as many targets and looks, along with with Reed. And if Wicks is, still in the mix, Tucker Kraft has put a couple good weeks together as well. So, it's very similar. There's a lot of guys that eat there. If Coleman and Kincaid come back into the offense, which I think they're going to this week, maybe it's a little step back for Cooper and Shakir, and hopefully not Shakir because I need him big the next 3 weeks.
I just look at it, Chris, from the standpoint of Watson's that big play guy. So I'm not even really worried per se about like, oh, Dobbs comes back and everything.
Yeah.
Because again, I describe Watson as he's not the kind of guy that's going to get it done on volume. He's not going to get 10 targets a game. Okay. Like we want from certain wide receivers. He's more about if he gets those 4 to 6 targets, can he go and put up 2 40-yard touchdowns plus? That's his ability that he can do. And one thing that's like kind of gone on under the radar, Jayden Reed's become obsolete in this offense. Okay. He's done absolutely nothing since the start of the year. So
he's just touchdown dependent. He's what he
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like for the last month here, the passing game in Green Bay has gone backwards, and this is a Josh Jacobs show. It's 100%. Pound Josh Jacobs 20 plus times a game. Jordan Love disappoints on a weekly basis, and he takes the receivers down with them. Now Watson, what was he like 4 for 110 last week? So he was the guy that ate. Jayden Reed bageled. Tucker Kraft gave you that solid 12 to 15 points that he's been doing now for weeks. But other than that, this high-powered Packers passing offense that we all thought coming into the season has really turned to ground and pound with Josh Jacobs.
100%.
No, absolutely. And the other thing too that I focused on was obviously the schedule, and I fast forward to week 17 against the Vikings. And I think that game's going to be fireworks. And you can't run on the Vikings, okay? But they're a pass funnel. And that's the type of game that I could see where it's like, okay, I'm trying to make up ground, or I got a team in contention, but I got a few teams ahead of me. I'm starting Watson, not with confidence, Chris, but it's the shootout. Like anything could happen. That's the type of player that I want against the Vikings, where Green Bay's not going to be able to run the ball, and Watson could have a monster week 17 that propels you.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. 100%.
Tight ends, 2 under the radar guys. Listen, we're starting McBride, Kelsey, Kittle, Njoku, all those guys, right? Bowers, Janu Smith. We're starting those guys. I'm going to give you 2 streaming guys that I think the rest of the year are going to be good, and they were solid last week, and that's Jawan Johnson and Grant Calcaterra. Those are the 2 guys that I would feel confident streaming.
Nelson, I'm with you. I picked up Jawan Johnson on 2 of my teams I was bringing into the playoffs last week. That was my get for that, setting up my playoff teams. I actually played him in one of them. Now with this Derek Carr injury, you worry, but Jawan Johnson, man, he jumps off the screen. When he's playing, that Derek Carr injury is a killer, because I thought the same thing. I was like, watching that game, I'm like, I have my tight end here for the fantasy playoffs that not many people are going to have in the field, with that whole Saints offense falling apart. This guy could be 7 for 80 and a touchdown each week, and you save yourself if you're not the Bowers and McBride owners. And to see Carr go down now, I don't know what I'm getting out of whoever the hell they're going to play in the Saints offense at quarterback. Well,
the way I look at it, Chris, is their offense is probably not going to be as efficient and move the ball as well without Carr. But usually an inexperienced quarterback that comes in focuses more of the middle of the field and doesn't. Yeah. And you're going to see more checkdowns and a lot more around the field rather than them throwing outside the numbers. So I think it's still good for Jawan.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. 2 streaming defenses. Can we talk about defenses? Is that okay? Sure.
Everything's on the table here, Nelson. We talk kickers, we talk defense, we talk life, we talk everything here, Nelson.
All right. So on defenses, the top defenses are already owned, so there's no need to talk about them. But I think the Bengals and the Cardinals are 2 streaming defenses for the fantasy playoffs. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, Chris, when we were doing the show.
Mhm.
And again, just bring them up again, that I think that I don't know about, I'm not going to get carried away saying potential difference makers, but like 10 to 15 points, I think is on the table for those guys.
Yeah, the Arizona one, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when we were talking defenses. I rostered them on my playoff teams now. I'm going to be playing them this week versus the Patriots. It was just disappointing because, I flipped the narrative where I dropped the Texans defense that I was riding for the last month when they had a week 14 bye. I dropped them going into week 14 for the Arizona defense, and the Arizona defense this past week gave a bagel. Hopefully, I like that, though. I like, I'm taking them in. They just gave a bagel. They did nothing, no sacks, no turnovers, whatever. Give me them at home in a desperate game. They've lost, I don't know how many games in a row. Arizona's been terrible. Hopefully their defense wakes up and Drake May gives them a couple turnovers. I like that call. The Bengal defense, Nelson, it's probably, schedule related because that defense really is getting carved up.
No, absolutely. And you saw
They do
Monday
get some
night.
sacks, though.
Yeah. And here's the thing, though. You saw Monday night, right? What did they put up? 10 points?
Yeah, they got a couple turnovers. Yep.
That's the thing. Like, they gave up points, but they still got it done for fantasy. I mean, that's all you really can ask for your defense.
Sure. Yep. Just real quick, while we're on this defense, do you really want your defense, to look at it like, all right, who's playing the Giants? Give me that defense. I think the mind frame of the fantasy player has to change. We're always looking for that defense that is playing the bad offense, and you're going to hold them to only like 7 points or maybe get a shutout like that. But it seems like those are the defenses that bomb out, and there's not that much action in the games or everything like that. You're seeing and this is just based on like the Lions defense like weeks ago when they were turning out 15, 20 points. Nobody thinks as the Lions as like a good defense, but they're opportunistic and they're getting, the high scoring games. It's turning like these teams loose to sack the quarterback when they're up 20 points. They get a couple turnovers, a touchdown. It's just, it's different.
Best indicator of a good defense is a good offense. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
That's what I'm saying, Dan. You're right.
Yeah.
That's
you want
my point.
the turnovers and the sacks. That's what you really teams that can get to that point. Because what are the odds you're holding a team down to 7 points?
Right.
That's really going to happen.
If your offense can get up on them by 14 points or something like that, the opposing offense is going to have to go to the air. And when the opposing offense has to go to the air, not wants to, but has to, that's when good things happen for your defense, because now all of a sudden they can pin their ears back. They don't have to worry about playing the run near as much or anything like that. And they can just start creating havoc. And the more havoc they create, then that's when the turnovers come, the sacks come, and everything. So, that's definitely the way. When I'm starting out every season, that's actually what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, which team is going to be playing the team that I think is going to be, like the worst offense in week 1. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those teams that I think have a really great offense and their defense is good enough to take advantage of it.
Agreed.
That's all I had, guys.
All right. Well, let's before we get out of here, let's go through a couple of Week 15 things. Let's look specifically at this week. For a lot of people, the playoffs are a 1 week at a time thing. Not a hey, we're in the sprint for 3 weeks. It's like we got to win this week, or there is no next week. So I'm curious. For each of you, one player who probably won't be heavily started that you think actually should be. Chris, what do you got for
week 15, I have a name that I'm going deep, guys, but we saw it last week, and I think it has a chance in this game with a 55 total to pop. But if you had, if you picked up Tim Patrick, and he was just sitting at the end of your bench, I wouldn't think too long about putting him in. Well, maybe I said that wrong, but I think he's startable. I think he's under consideration here to be someone that could drop you, 15 fantasy points in your flex spot if you're a little banged up this week. Give me some pieces of that Lions-Bills game, but I know it's a little deep. But if maybe you're the George Pickens owner and George Pickens has been in your starting lineup, now you're going into the playoffs and Tim Patrick is sitting on your bench. Maybe he's that good 1 week replacement for Pickens this week to get you to the following week. So Tim Patrick, he's playing like 70% of the snaps the last couple weeks. You know what you're getting in this offense. Khalif Raymond is still out, so he's seen the uptick in playing time. I'm with Nelson with the Roma Dunze, and I'm back in on the Jalen Waddle here for the playoff run. So those names right there. I'll throw in one tight end, Pat Freiermuth. Freiermuth hasn't had that good of a season, but in this game, you're not going to be able to run on Philly too much. You could get into a little bit of a high-scoring game. George Pickens is away, and this Steeler passing game isn't scaring anybody. So maybe Freiermuth comes out with a 6 for 60 and a touchdown type game if you need him. So I'll throw those names out you for Week 15 starts.
All right, Nelson. Now that Chris has taken all the good players, who you got left?
Freiermuth and Tim Patrick are the good players.
I mean, he took a Dunze from me. I'm starting him. I'm going to start him in that game against Minnesota. I think it could end up. He's got the potential to have a big game. The other guy that I really like, he's pretty much starting on most teams. So I don't want to get too crazy under the radar type guys. We are in the shootout, so you got to go with your bread and butter. But I think Darnell Mooney could have a monster game this week. So I think that's set up well for him. And then the guy that I think for running back is Patrick Taylor. If Garendo's out, I think Patrick Taylor is a guy that you could just put in your lineup. And I know for most people are going to be hesitant. It's like, man, we haven't seen nothing, all year long. But at the end of the season, sometimes that's what happens, man, with like these running backs is it's the next man standing, the healthiest guy. And I've got him on a few teams. So like that could be an interesting decision tomorrow.
So let me get this straight, Nelson. You're seriously recommending starting a 4th string running back on a Thursday game? I'm right there with you.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
It's the system. It's not the player. It's the system.
Yep.
Shout out to Harry Snowman in the chat saying a lot of nice things, about all of us. And our guy Joey Brown checking in. Joey Brown got his primetime team in. So shout out to all the guys, all our listeners there. Everybody sticking with us all year long. Dan, what do you got? What's on your list?
Yeah, I got. I already mentioned one of them earlier, Adam Thielen. It doesn't feel good putting him in over guys like Flowers or Ridley or guys like that, but I think I might consider that because, Bryce Young, he looks like a new man at quarterback, and Thielen's really his favorite target again, and you can't deny it. They came through that Eagles game, and Thielen came out with 11 targets, 9 for 101 or something like that. 19 points against the Eagles. Who does that? So Thielen's a name I'm definitely going to ride. The other name I'm looking at, that often isn't in starting lineups or maybe is just on the borderline of being in starting lineups is Jameson Williams. That kid's got, I think 3 less targets than Amon-Ra St. Brown over the last 5 weeks. It's, and he's got so much speed. They're using him at every level of the field. There's going to be a monster game happening out of Jameson sometime in the next 3 weeks. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that was my guy, Dan. I think J-Mo is set to smash against the Bills, and I think he could really be a difference maker in this sprint. The guy, one thing he has to do is just stop being a knucklehead because the talent is there, but he'll do that stupid penalty. He'll just do something stupid in every game. But the talent's off the chart. The speed is unstoppable. As a Bills fan, I am really worried. I think they're really going to focus on over the middle and trying to do their best with Amon-Ra. But I don't think they're going to have an answer for J-Mo. And with all the attention that's going to go to Amon-Ra, I think J-Mo's going to beat them on several occasions. So the one
So
guy,
you guys are in on J-Mo. I say Tim Patrick. Here comes the Sam Laporta 12 catch,
yeah,
140, 3 touchdown on no fantasy playoff rosters game coming up.
yeah. I mean, the one guy I'll throw in, we talked about him earlier, but if Breece Hall doesn't play, I'm going to roll out Braylon Allen against that Jags defense and just hope for the best.
I think Isaiah Davis outdoes him again.
Yeah,
He could, but I mean, at least he was
That kid
some
looks good.
passes.
That kid, he passes the eye test for me. That kid looks
Definitely does.
Yeah,
I mean, I
totally
agree, but do you have Isaiah? I mean, I don't have Isaiah, so
good. I got him on all my non-playoff teams, Matt.
okay. So
well, you
You know.
know, he came from South Dakota State, and you know why they're so good is because the Gophers cannot recruit anybody from in-state. So, like, all the good players from Minnesota end up going to South Dakota.
the one guy that I don't know if he's going to get enough, snaps during the sprint, or they say, I think they really want to see what they got here. Is Kendrick Miller, to see if he does something over these next few weeks, because I still think this kid's talented, and I still think they really want to see what they have in him heading into next year. They locked up Kamara for the long term. This team needs to lose, wants to lose. I mean, the Giants, best thing that happened to Giants fans was that guy missing the kick or getting blocked at the end, whatever the hell happened.
Oh, for sure. And the observation I made, Matt, last week was I was thinking to myself is, man, Miller's going to make these Kamara teams, kind of, not obsolete, but, Kamara, for the most part, I think there's a lot of teams in the shootout with Kamara because he's been so good. And now Miller's going to kind of, put him in check, I think. I don't know if Kamara can have those monster games if Miller is getting this much run.
It's a great observation because also, Taysom Hill is done for the year. So you saw Keandre Miller get that carry inside the 5. He's going to take that role maybe, for the rest of the season here. They want to see him in the backfield when they get in the red zone to pound it in because Taysom Hill isn't there anymore. So, yeah, if you're an Alvin Kamara owner here in the fantasy playoffs, you took a little bit of a hit, I think, with Miller back and them going to give him some more touches, especially in that red zone.
Since we're talking about that game, how insane was the coach going after the punter? That was pretty rough.
He's a psycho. He's a psycho.
That's how you know he was the special teams coach before he became the interim head coach.
Yeah. That hurt though. Another game that you get screwed out on, and this was the second time again with the Giants. They make that field goal. I'm following that game closely as a big Tracy owner in my, teams and Neighbors. I think I had Tracy and Neighbors going in on either one or both in every team I was following closely in week 14. And I needed that kick to go in, get me to overtime, give me another 1 or 2 possessions of Tracy points and Neighbors points. Wind up making an actual huge difference when I look back on my week 14. But that happened the week before on Thanksgiving with the Bears offense and the Lions offenses. That London game.
At least they gave us Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, That too. The Giants games are always interesting every week. You never know really what you're going to get. I'm going to throw something. I know I'm going to go off script here real quick. Matt threw his lineup decision at you guys. I'm going to throw mine at you guys. I have a team this week. I got 5 wide receivers, and one of them has to sit. This is called Champagne Problems, I guess. Juwan Jennings, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, JSN, and Zay Flowers. Those are my 5 wide receivers. One of them has to sit.
Jeez.
I want to start all 5 of them somehow, but one of them has to go. Does anybody have Flowers? Nelson.
I'm sitting.
I'll throw this. You're sitting Jennings.
I'm sitting
Jennings. The hot name. Okay.
Yeah, I really like Jennings.
Matt, you want to break the tie?
I think I was like, Jennings, I'm definitely start when you started off, but I can't sit Kupp. I don't think I could ever sit Kupp. So I think it's got to be Jennings. I mean, Zay Flowers, I understand he could have that,
Zay's been inconsistent,
versus-
guys, but against the Giants,
coming off a bye.
he
I
could.
think you got to do it.
That's
He
the
could
question.
put.
I mean,
That's another guy. Like I look at him and like it's scary because it's like, okay, he could put up like 2 for 40, a little 6-point game, and you're like, what the heck? But like he could just go off.
He's the boom guy that you want right now on a week. Like, all right, give me him. He's been a little slow for the last bunch of weeks. You're banking on one of these 3 weeks, and hopefully this week right off the bat for the Zay Flowers explosion, versus that Giants secondary. So for the upside, I think Zay has a spot in my lineup. Caveat to this: 5 wide receivers with Kupp and AJ Brown. It's a Jalen Hurts and Stafford quarterback room. Does that change your mind? Would you pair? You're pairing either Stafford with Kupp or Hurts with AJ Brown. Does that change your mind at all?
I'm starting
really?
Hurts. I think
Hurts.
the Eagles are going to get back on track this week. They were so bad last week. If you're buying the narrative that AJ Brown is going to eat this week, you have to start Jalen Hurts.
I mean that's what I said earlier on the show. But if you're going to play matchups and you want to just strictly play matchups, then you sit AJ Brown. But I'm just not sitting my first round pick and coming off a game where he threw a bitch fit and Kellen Moore basically said that we got to look for ways to get him the ball more.
Yep.
Yeah. No,
100%.
I'll be.
All right, guys, quick. Let's each give one player only that is probably going to be heavily started that you plan to bench if you can. I know sometimes injuries make it so you just can't bench guys that you don't feel comfortable with. But who's a heavily started player that you just don't feel good about at all this week? Nelson.
Marvin Harrison.
Oh, you took mine. That's it. I'm out. That's funny.
Yeah,
He's a bench candidate every week.
He's 100% started, right? And
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, he's the guy that I'm sitting. I think Christian Gonzalez is going to be on him because they don't have like a legit number 2. Usually New England will sometimes not worry about Gonzalez following a guy if they've got like 2 legit wide receivers. I expect to see shadow coverage, and I just don't see any upside with Harrison this week.
That's Harrison was my answer. So I'll just, follow up on that. He's been real bad. And, besides the Gonzalez thing, but I don't think anybody has this issue really. Cause who's got Marvin Harrison in the championship, sprint here? I don't know how many teams that have second round Marvin Harrison rostered.
Hopefully not many, but all right. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with one that I think it's a risky bench, but it's one that it just makes me so nervous to start him. Devonta Smith. He's got to have that TD bailout in a low volume passing attack. It really looks likely that whatever volume there is probably going to be heavily tilted towards AJ Brown. The Steelers defense is good. I don't know. I got a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach about Devonta Smith. Am I crazy?
Dan, I hope you're 100% wrong on that because he'd be one of the top 3 guys that I'm excited about. He's on 80% of my playoff teams that I'm taking in, and I'm excited about that because I feel like it's a very underperforming season for Devonta Smith. And like I said, with Goddard being out now, I'm hoping he's, along with JSN, the 2 of them are those big difference makers. Devonta Smith even more so than JSN because there'll be a lot more JSN in the championship rounds than Devonta. But, it looks wide open. If Devonta could sneak out a 20-point game this week versus the Steelers, and hopefully Porter is on, AJ all game long, and Devonta has that big week, these next 3 weeks, I think, are really, again, set up nicely for Devonta to save his season and put up some big numbers down the stretch here in the playoffs. And what better time would it for it than these 3 weeks?
All right, Matt, who you got?
I just want to say it just to hate rage T. Higgins, but I'm probably playing T. Higgins in the league that I got him in.
I think we all get together this week and burn a T. Higgins jersey together.
Something.
For what he did to all of us. That's just ridiculous. You wonder, like in the NFL games, like when they go to the bench and it's Burrow, Higgins, and Chase, if Higgins is like looking at Burrow, like, did I do something wrong to you this week that just every drop back is to Chase and I can't get anything? You know, I know he dropped one early in the game, but how does that happen? It's just ridiculous.
And then Burrow comes back after that game going, yeah, it's 100% T. Higgins is coming back with us. I'll do whatever I have to do. All right. Let's see. Who else we got on the Situm? Chris, who you got?
No, Marvin Harrison was my guy. That was my call.
That was it. Okay.
Yep.
All right, there we go, guys. We've been on for a little over an hour and a half, so I think time to get our listeners back to their jobs and being productive again. But we thank you for hanging out with us, and this is a time of year where all of a sudden we have a little bit of extra time on our hands because of the fact that we're no longer managing dozens of teams and doing waivers for them and all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't yet tried out Fast Draft, I recommend you sign up, check it out. All you have to do is go to the App Store, download Fast Draft. It's a really fun game. It's a really easy game. They have something called the Flex 6 Frenzy. That's a weekly game, super easy to play. 6 players from any position. So there's no quarterback. It's just wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs. Pick any 6 players. And then you can give them each multipliers, like 2x multiplier or 1.5x multiplier. So there's multipliers you can switch around to boost your scores on them, and you can set them up from your own personal rankings. So you can just set up your rankings in there. Tell the system how many drafts you want to make using those rankings, and the system will sign you up for drafts and make those drafts until it gets to the number of drafts you said. So if you want to do 10 drafts, boom. You just put them in there, put in your, what your rankings are, and the system will draft them all for you. So you don't even have to worry about it. There's no bigger easy button for anything. So just go to the App Store, download it, give it a try, and because you guys listen to us, we have a special code for you. Empire will match your deposit 100% up to $25. Capital letters, small letters, doesn't matter. Just type Empire. You're getting a free $25 match. So give it a try. It's a lot of fun. I've done some of them, and I'll be doing some more this weekend. But beyond that, thank you for tuning in, checking us out. Next Tuesday, we'll be on as usual instead of Wednesday. Certainly that's the hope. We hope we don't have any more production problems, but in between, make sure that you are hitting that like button, subscribe to the Player Profiler channel. We really appreciate that. If you're listening to the podcast, give the show a like on there as well. And good luck to everybody. It's the playoffs. Let's get it.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.